Asperger Syndrome: Signs, Symptoms, and Solutions. Written by Tricia Burton. Narrated by Lisa S. Ware. Copyright 2018. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced in any form or by any means without permission in writing from the publisher, Shelby Peterson. If you like my book, please leave a review on Amazon. I would appreciate it a lot. Thanks. Introduction. We make an instant judgment when we meet a new person based on their appearance. What kind of clothes they are wearing, facial expressions, body language, voice, tone, and behavior. Everything plays a role in creating their personality's image in our mind, and then we respond accordingly. We have some people around us who may be different from what we are used to, like those with Asperger syndrome, who find it difficult to pick up the subtle little signs of social acceptance. This makes it difficult for them to interact and communicate with others. Difficulty in connecting with other people can lead to severe confusion, further leading to depression and anxiety. Lack of awareness and understanding in common people about Asperger's creates a lot of problems for people who have Asperger's syndrome. People with Asperger's syndrome lack social understanding, and they find it difficult to carry out a reciprocal conversation. In this case, if others will help them cope with awkward situations by understanding this issue, it will help prevent them from getting into a depression. People with Asperger's syndrome have a passionate interest in a specific field. The simplest way to describe a person with Asperger's syndrome is to describe them as a person who observes and understands society, people, and the world around them differently than other people. We have gained much understanding in recent years regarding children and adults with Asperger's syndrome, but it is very important for our future to spread knowledge, change our attitudes, and help people with Asperger's syndrome to fight their challenges. Children with Asperger's need extra care and support. On the other hand, it is needed to provide facilities for adults having Asperger's to get better employment opportunities matching their skills and abilities. These amazing human beings have a lot to offer if they are provided with better opportunities. People with Asperger's syndrome don't have a defective or negative way of thinking, they just think differently than others. They have a different set of priorities as compared to other people. These people have some very strong and positive traits that make them seek truth, knowledge, and perfection. Their sensory experiences and perceptions also tend to differ. Unlike others, their main goal is to solve a problem to attain perfection, instead of taking care of social needs of others. They are more productive than cooperative. Instead of seeing the big picture, they tend to see smaller details. Attention to small details can be seen as a strength or a weakness, but as a strength, they get to see errors that are ignored by others. Just a little bit of support and appreciation from people around them can make a huge difference for the people with Asperger's syndrome. Getting more and more knowledge about Asperger, learning new strategies to fight these difficulties, and then utilizing this knowledge for helping them can bring a great change. Yet, not everyone with Asperger needs help, and most of them are capable enough of fighting their own battles. Asperger's syndrome is generally a hidden disability, which means you can't tell if the person has Asperger's syndrome or not. In most cases, their outward appearance looks just like other people. People with Asperger's syndrome face major problems dealing with so-called normal lifestyle. Their rigid approach and to somewhat extent inflexible nature makes it very difficult for them to understand their social surroundings well. However, despite of all these difficulties, many people with Asperger's are free thinkers, and some of them have proved to be highly skilled and people with amazing talents. With the increasing level of awareness about Asperger's, hopefully in the coming years, attitude towards people having Asperger's syndrome will change drastically, and this will further help in boosting their self-esteem. This book is also a small effort to spread more awareness about Asperger's by distributing the latest information, which has been obtained on Asperger syndrome, to change the attitudes. Chapter 1. Background. The Asperger syndrome, with its unusual profile of abilities that are recently discovered by medical specialists, might have been part of the human species from the very beginning of time. These humans with unique characteristics have probably played an important and valuable role throughout history. However, until the late 20th century, we had not distinguished their unique abilities and had not specifically described people having such characteristics. In 1944, an Austrian pediatrician known as Dr. Hans Asperger used this diagnostic term of Asperger's syndrome for describing children showing some unique personality traits. He identified that some of the children referred to him showed similar patterns of certain qualities and personality characteristics. Leo Kanner's paper on autism was published in 1943, and Hans Asperger's paper was published right after it, 1 year after Leo Kanner's paper. Hans Asperger's paper provided grounds for the diagnostic of the Asperger syndrome. Both papers were somewhat similar in findings, but in spite of the fact that both Kanner and Asperger were trained in medicine in Vienna, apparently both were not aware of each other's work. Kanner moved to the USA, but Asperger stayed in Europe. As Asperger's paper was in German and its translation was not commonly available, he stayed relatively unknown. Asperger's paper explained some children and adults who lack communication skills and cannot understand social norms well. This group of people had fixed interests and very rigid manners. Moreover, they loved sticking to the routine and hated change, and most of them were physically clumsy. The major difference from Kanner's findings was that children described by Asperger showed no delayed learning abilities in general. Unlike the children described by Kanner, the children in Asperger's paper generally had no significant delays in early cognitive or language development. Because the major characteristic of people related to Asperger's syndrome was lack of empathy, Asperger named this condition autistic psychopathy. Later, Gerhardt. Chapter 2. What is Asperger's? Commonly, Asperger's is known by the following names: Asperger syndrome, AS, advanced autism, high-functioning autism. Asperger syndrome is a particular kind of pervasive developmental disorder, PDD, that comes under the autistic spectrum. Asperger syndrome basically is the mildest to highest functioning stages of the disorder called pervasive development disorder, or PDD, which also appears in the autistic spectrum. Like all other disorders of that spectrum, Asperger's is also a disorder based on neurological issues related to the development, and most often its cause is unknown. In this disorder, there is a divergence from normal patterns or irregularity, especially in three aspects of development. Firstly, people with this disorder find it hard to relate to social norms. Secondly, they lack social skills, and for communication purposes, their use of words and language is limited to some distinctive personality and stylistic traits that include monotonous or protective features. The third characteristic is that their range of interests is very limited and they don't like to change it. It is the existence of these three characteristics that range from mild to severe throughout the pervasive development disorder spectrum. The severity and existence of these features help in distinguishing between Asperger's and autism. Although these dimensions are helpful in understanding PDD along the spectrum and distinguishing Asperger's from autism, yet it is not clear that either Asperger's is just a milder form of autism or these two disorders have mere similarities liked by any broader conditions. One essential requirement of Asperger syndrome, in particular as compared to overall development, is slower or abnormal nonverbal communication skills. This requirement is essential for all the autistic spectrum disorders in general. If any person has difficulty in verbal communication, then problems in social dealings cannot be avoided. Nonverbal communication disorders present in other disorders like schizophrenia can also create problems, but they are different from Asperger's. Communication disorder in Asperger's is present throughout life and creates self esteem issues. Chapter 3. Is it different from autism? There has been a continuing debate in the past, since a few decades ago, about whether or not Asperger's syndrome is an associated form of autism or if it is a completely separate disorder from autism. A lot of publications have attempted to explain the difference between autism and Asperger's with several standards to measure them. Even though Connor and Asperger first presented their original cases and saw clear differences, now there are some diagnostic confusions. This confusion is especially due to several case studies conducted later that have not necessarily used that criterion which was recommended by Asperger. This confusion is particularly visible in areas pertaining to the early development of learning, language, and motor skills. Asperger's syndrome is no longer treated as a separate disorder and is not diagnosed on its own. It is considered a subcategory of a broader class named autism spectrum disorder. Although some people and practitioners still use this term, it is part of the autism group because these related mental health issues have some symptoms in common. Asperger's is actually a high functioning condition in the autism spectrum disorder. It means that people having Asperger's are functioning better than the other types of ASD. In other words, Asperger's symptoms are not as severe, and that's the thing that distinguishes this disorder from autism. Another major difference is that Asperger's doesn't cause language delay. One of the major differences between autism and Asperger's syndrome is related to diagnostic age. In young children, Asperger's syndrome is diagnosed later as compared to autism. Although Asperger has described in his original paper that children with Asperger's syndrome start having difficulties by the age of 2, but in reality, Asperger's cases usually are diagnosed a bit later. Children with autism, however, start to show behavioral problems particularly, and their parents can figure out problems with language development by the age of 18 months to several years of age. This is contrasted with children with Asperger's syndrome, who mostly do not have any kind of language problem or delayed developmental problems, so it is difficult to diagnose this disorder at a very early age. There are a few signs, but people usually do not consider them. Parents typically begin to worry about child's odd and unusual behavior from usually 3 to 4 years of age. Asperger's syndrome is usually diagnosed when a child is in preschool or has started a play group and any other social participation activity. Perhaps the problem starts when a child has to engage in social interaction with other children. The child's behavioral problems become more noticeable when he/she is in an ordered social setting. So, simply put, in autism, language problems and learning difficulties are from significant to severe. On the other hand, in Asperger's syndrome, language problems and learning difficulties are usually less severe, with the exceptions being prevalent enough to mention them, of course. Children with autism are usually good with motor skills, but children with Asperger's are not. Chapter 4. Some facts about Asperger's. Here are some quick facts about Asperger's. Asperger's is a lifelong disorder, and it affects about 2 to 36 in every 10,000 people. It occurs more often in boys than girls. Boys have 4 times more Asperger's syndrome as compared to girls. Persons with Asperger's syndrome have, in general, normal intellectual abilities. In people with autistic disorders, approximately 20% of the people have an IQ level in the normal range, and they are also referred to as high functioning. Chapter 5. Common traits of people with Asperger's syndrome. The traits of people with Asperger's syndrome can be grouped in 3 different areas as The flexibility of thoughts, interaction, and communication. People with Asperger's are very honest, sometimes too much. They are famous for speaking their mind. They may like solitude, but can prove to be an extremely loyal friend. Along with these traits, a high level of sensory and anxiety issues are also seen in people with Asperger syndrome. However, it is not all negative because people with AS also have some very positive qualities like reliability, honesty, and attentiveness. They are also detail oriented people and often known as perfectionists. In fact, this unique blend of positive and negative traits in different people provides the world diverse personalities and services. Social interactions. Most of those who have Asperger's syndrome find social interactions very difficult. Some of the people with this disorder prefer to stay alone and avoid social interactions, while others may like to build relationships and want to socialize, but they find the rules of social interactions difficult to understand. In society, we have some unwritten rules to stay appropriate, but people with AS find it confusing and make mistakes. Behaving according to certain rules and scenarios makes things difficult for them. Consequently, social interactions can be stressful and an awkward experience for them. This directly damages their self esteem, and that's why most of them avoid social gatherings in large groups. People with Asperger's may find it difficult to make direct eye contact with others and find a sense of closeness to others hard to handle. Communication. Unlike people with autism, people with Asperger's syndrome don't have any difficulty in learning the language in childhood. Still, they are not well aware of the art of using the words properly. They find it difficult to understand in what situation which word will be more suitable. That's the reason phrases, sarcasms, and sayings can be difficult to understand for them. In phrases and sarcasm, what is usually said is different from its actual meaning, and they find it confusing. For instance, if you bumped your head into something and your friend says, "Well done," now he isn't congratulating you actually, but it will create confusion for people with AS. In the same way, they may learn some words or phrases that they actually don't understand well, and then they will use them in the wrong context. In fact, in the original paper of Asperger, he called children with Asperger's little professors. These little geniuses have quite the refined vocabulary as compared to their peers. The only problem they face is that they find it difficult to understand figurative language and normally use words for their literal meanings. They particularly face a problem in understanding non-literal parts of languages. For instance, they have a problem in understanding humor, irony, and phrases. They may understand the humor, but they can't get the real essence to share it with others. Still, there are several reports with evidence that people with AS may have a sound appreciation for humor, and the one I personally know has that indeed. For people with Asperger's syndrome, expressing feelings in proper words can be really difficult, and sometimes when they can't express them, they get frustrated. Flexibility of thought. Another problem that these people have to face is to deal with the irregular character or mood swings of the other people around them. It can be extremely difficult for someone with Asperger's. They actually like routine, and changing routines, behaviors, or circumstances can be really upsetting for them. Unplanned changes and spontaneous surprises can cause trouble because they have to deal with a lot of preparation and stress. They also have quite rigid opinions and thoughts that form their lives. Usually, they also lack empathy, which was a major characteristic that Asperger mentioned. Even though they have a lot of difficulties handling issues that arise from the inflexibility of thoughts, yet this trait can be positive as well. They can focus on a specific field more than any other person and can gain amazing results. See it as a constant laser focus with the inability to shut off. Some people with Asperger's and a special interest have become masters in the field of their interest. Some people with Asperger's will find they have an outstanding memory for extremely precise details, and they can keep their attention focused on something for a longer time. Anxiety. People with Asperger's syndrome usually have a higher level of anxiety than other people without this disorder. There are some things that can be normal for other people, like meeting any new person, doing any work on a specific time, etc. But for people suffering from Asperger's syndrome, these things can create a lot of stress. If something goes wrong or something happens that is unexpected, they find it too much to handle. In such situations, they reach their breaking point and can face a lot of anxiety. Chapter 6. Characteristics. There are a number of characteristics linked with people that have Asperger's syndrome, which are mentioned below. Improper, awkward, or minimal social relations. People with Asperger's find it difficult to form new relationships. They can't understand the subtle social rules and gestures of other people. They are often too literal in their language. What they say is actually what they mean, and they take literal meanings of what anyone else says. That's why they tend to face difficulties in understanding phrases and sarcasm. Moreover, sometimes they learn words without knowing their meaning and can use words that are relatively odd or do not fit into the context. They love it when they are admired for anything, and being first is what they want. Imperfections and criticism are very difficult for them to handle. They lack common sense. Sometimes they have issues with learning math, writing, and reading abilities. They often have a problem in dealing with complex topics. Their verbal cognitive talents are average to above average, while nonverbal talents are average to below average. Their accent may differ. They can be too loud or too formal, or their tone can be completely expressionless. In conversations, they are most often self-centered. They tend to ignore others' feelings and talk about topics of their own interest without considering that it might make others bored. Their speaking style is usually kind of robotic or scripted. They love to stick to the routine things and like controlled environment. Unexpected changes can make them feel depressed. They find it difficult to involve themselves in new activities, and that's why they prefer to do regular activities. Their interests are pretty narrow, and mostly they are obsessed with few subjects of their core interest. Most often, these interests are related to transport, computers, geeky things, drawing, maps, historical animals, etc. The majority of them lack empathy. They are usually honest, very reliable, and dedicated to their subject of self-interest. These are also their strongest abilities that make them especially capable of achieving great things. Clumsiness can be seen in more than 60% of the children having Asperger's syndrome. Several studies have shown that awkward expressions and clumsiness in movement actually can be seen in nearly all the kids with Asperger's syndrome, but in some cases, it is not as significant. Children with Asperger's normally run in an immature manner, but as they grow up, their body movements get better. Still, adults with Asperger's sometimes may have a gait that lacks fluency. Children with Asperger's also have difficulty in catching, throwing, or kicking a ball properly. People having Asperger's syndrome are usually prone to depression. Almost every one person with Asperger's in 3 will have some kind of depression. They are often overwhelmed when the love or affection is expressed with high intensity. It may make them behave awkward or shy. They like brief and light expressions of affection. In fact, this kind of affection makes them feel loved and helps with their depression. Chapter 7: Causes. The real cause of Asperger's syndrome has not yet been identified. Contemporary research advocates that a propensity toward the condition of Asperger's may run in families. Research also suggests that people having Asperger's syndrome are also at high risk for other problems like attention deficit disorder, schizophrenia, depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder. Although these problems are most often present in people with Asperger's, still, Asperger's is not caused by any of these psychiatric problems. The precise reason for Asperger's syndrome is still being inspected. Nevertheless, some research does suggest that there are a few factors like genetic and environmental that actually may become a reason for the transformation in brain development. Moreover, it has been proved that a person with Asperger's syndrome is not responsible for this disorder, and this condition is out of his or her own control. Asperger's is not the fault of either a person's upbringing or any other social circumstances. Nobody should be blamed for being the reason for this condition. However, research shows that genetic factors play a major role and might be the main cause of Asperger's syndrome. If we talk about the original paper and research conducted by Asperger, then the same evidence can be seen there. Asperger himself distinguished that in cases where he studied the close family members of the AS person, he found similar qualities to some extent. Mostly, these similarities were found in parents and other close family members. Later studies showed that these autistic traits and similar behaviors are also present in close relatives of people having Asperger's syndrome. Hans Asperger explained in his original study that similar symptoms of Asperger's patients were also present in other family members, especially in fathers. This provides evidence that Asperger's syndrome has some connection with genetic factors. Later studies also proved these findings and supported this observation of Hans Asperger. Although it is very evident that genetic factors play a vital role in Asperger's syndrome, still, not any specific gene has yet been identified that can be blamed for causing a problem. It is believed that multiple factors play a role in the appearance of all the autistic disorders. This means that some of the members have already had problems with learning new things, language, and having social interaction, but these traits are so subtle to other members that they are often overlooked. Most of the research related to behavioral genetics shows that all the disorders related to autism have common genetic mechanisms. However, it is believed that Asperger's genetic mechanism is much stronger than autism. Recent studies show that probably some specific alleles are responsible for making people vulnerable to Asperger's. If that's the case, then particular combinations of these alleles will also be responsible for the severity of the disorder. A few of the Asperger's cases have also been associated with teratogens. This is the agent that causes birth defects if the fetus has exposure to it in the first 2 months of pregnancy. There is strong evidence that most of the Asperger's cases have developed this disorder in early developmental stages, but there is still a possibility that ASD can start at later stages. By researchers, many of the environmental factors have also been tested, but no significant result is yet available or has been confirmed by investigators. Chapter 8: Symptoms. In children with Asperger's, it can be a bit tricky to diagnose the disorder. They often have good cognitive skills, and their vocabulary is quite strong. Although they find it difficult to use words properly, their language skills are good. To an untrained person, a child having Asperger's syndrome might just seem like a normal kid with a different behavior or interest. The symptoms of Asperger's syndrome are different in children, teenagers, and adults. Thus, we will classify them into 3 categories for further explanation. It has mostly been seen in children ages 3 to 5. Parents often notice some abnormality when the kid starts nursery or when they interact with other children. Children with Asperger's syndrome may show the following symptoms. Symptoms during childhood. Children with Asperger's have a very formal style of talking that can be totally unlike their age. They may use very formal and hard words for speech as compared to other children of their age. They talk a lot, but most of their talks are only about their own favorite subjects. They don't care about others' interests. That's why they are often found engaged in one-sided conversations. They tend to verbalize their inner thoughts while conversing with others. They don't like to make eye contact, and most often stare at other things while talking. Their facial expressions and body posture are most often a bit odd or awkward. They may find difficulty in understanding social cues and may be inefficient at social skills. Reading other person's body language, conversing with their peers, and following social rules can be hard for these children. These kids dislike doing anything that is not in their routine. They want to stick to their routine. Most of them seem to lack empathy. They are not able to understand subtle differences in speech tones and styles. This thing makes it tricky for them to pick up differences in pitch and accents of tones and understand others properly. They take everything too literally and may have trouble with comprehending jokes or sarcastic comments. Not only this, they themselves have a very flat tone of speech that is without any expression. Some of them may have heightened sensitivity. They get annoyed by extreme noises, lights, etc. They have a very limited set of interests, and they often obsess with these interests. Most of the children with Asperger's have very unusual subjects of interest, like they may like detailed drawing, designing, math, astronomy, etc. They may like certain topics with obsession. For instance, they may find dinosaurs very interesting and keep reading about them, or they may want to know names of all the stars. They are not good at motor skills and may have delayed development. They may find difficulty in properly walking or writing. Catching a ball, riding a bike, eating for themselves, and holding things can be a little tricky for them. Symptoms during adolescent and teen years. Most of these symptoms, which children with Asperger's have, continue in later years. Most of the children, when they get a bit older, start to learn the skills that they lack. It is possible that they learn social skills, but communication often remains a problem for them. They continuously have difficulty in reading other behaviors and expressions. Just like other teenagers, in adolescence, a person with Asperger's also wants friends. They feel timid and nervous when approaching others and have difficulty in making friends. That's because kids with Asperger's are aware of the fact that they are different from others, and this makes them shy. Most teenagers try to look good in this age, but teens with Asperger's find it tiresome to put efforts to fit in with others. Moreover, they can be a little naive, immature, and too trusting that other teens don't find them cool enough to be friends. This scenario often leads these beautiful souls to being bullied or teased. That can become a reason for a stressful teenage life. Symptoms in adulthood. Asperger's syndrome is a lasting disorder. It stays with the person throughout life. Over time, it can be a little stabilized and things get a little better for the person with Asperger's syndrome, but it still stays there. Adults with Asperger's usually have a very good knowledge of their own strengths and weaknesses. They try and learn social skills and are the part of society like a normal person. Most of the people with Asperger's syndrome marry and have children. They prove themselves to be very talented human beings and get great success. Some guys I know in their late teens felt awkward dating, so we made them a business card that has a picture of Disney's Dory and reads, "I have short-term memory loss," If I forget your name, don't take it personally. If I stare, it's just because you're good looking. Make sure to give me a call. Here's my number. If I don't answer the phone, it's just because too many girls are calling me at the same time. They loved it, and they handed them out like crazy. Of course, some girls thought it was stupid, but they actually got some dates from it with girls who thought it was funny. Some of the traits associated with Asperger syndrome, like the attention to details and obsession or interest in certain subjects, lead them to great success. Because of these traits, they have chances of doing well in university and gaining success in their careers. Many people with Asperger's show great interest in technology and choose the programming or engineering field as their career. This is the reason that you can find many great historical figures that had the same disorder in their lives. Albert Einstein, Thomas Jefferson, Marie Curie, and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart are great examples of such respected historical figures having Asperger's syndrome. Chapter 9. Treatments. There is a broad range of supportive treatments for Asperger's syndrome that assist them, and a person having this disorder can be trained in getting better social skills and sending out better communication signals. These treatments help them to be capable of interacting more naturally in society. At present, like many of the other mental problems, there is no actual and effective cure for Asperger's syndrome. Still, by paying more attention to learning ways to manage the problems, lowering the symptoms, and getting better at social cues, most persons with Asperger's syndrome live quite a normal life. They have strong connections with close friends and loved ones. With all the positive things associated with Asperger's, there are some negatives as well. They find it difficult to express and manage emotions, and this leads them to depression and severe anxiety. To help them out with these problems, there are, fortunately, many psychological therapies and treatments. Psychosocial interventions for Asperger's. The best treatment for Asperger's synchronizes therapies that deal with the three main symptoms of the disorder. These symptoms are lack of communication skills, obsessions with repetitive routines, and awkward body movements. No single treatment package is available for all the children with Asperger's syndrome, but most professionals have the same opinion that the earlier you will start to address the issue, the better. A useful management program is that which is structured on the child's interests. A good treatment program offers a predictable timetable, tries to teach people with simple steps, vigorously connects the child's concentration in extremely planned activities, and offers frequent strengthening of behavior. It may comprise social skills guidance, therapy related to cognitive behaviors, medicine for other conditions, and methods that can be beneficial. These therapies may include psychotherapies to help the individual with Asperger's to learn better social skills and dealing with emotions associated with the disorder. Educating parents about the disorder and how they can help their kid. Therapies to improve behavior. Training to teach social skills. Intervention for proper education. Psychiatric medications. For hyperactivity, lack of concentration, and impulsivity, psychostimulants, clonidine, tricyclic antidepressants, Strattera. For bad temper and violence, mood stabilizers, beta blockers, clonidine, naltrexone, neuroleptics. For obsessions, anxiety, rituals, and pressures, SSRIs, tricyclic antidepressants. For anxiety, SSRIs, tricyclic antidepressants. With useful treatment, people with Asperger's syndrome can be trained to manage their disabilities with success, but they may still come across social circumstances and individual problems that can be challenging. Most of the adults with Asperger syndrome are able to work effectively in conventional jobs, even though they may persist to need support and moral encouragement from others to uphold a self regulating lifestyle. Although medications can help in controlling Asperger's, still, care must be taken while taking medications. Drugs are normally tested on people excluding people from ASD, which means side effects associated with ASD are usually not known. Thus, harmful effects of medications can be more common for people with Asperger's. Chapter 10: Strengths of People Having Asperger's. Along with some negative traits, there are also some very positive traits that are connected to Asperger's. Adults with Asperger's follow thoughts they have faith in without caring about others' opinion. They are not easily influenced by others' attitudes. They don't like to give up just because someone tries to encourage them to do so. They are more often than not faithful and trustworthy. For them, getting ahead of others is not as important as solving problems and facing challenges. Carefulness, authenticity, and attachment to responsibility matter more than a goal, particularly if that objective would make others suffer. They are good at distinguishing patterns and in categorizing things. They are rule followers. They feel comfortable with organized things, accuracy, and classification. These traits make it easy for them to follow subsequent rules, assigning resources and resolving issues. They are very truthful, optimistic, and real, which makes them faithful and trustworthy friends. They are often straightforward, say whatever comes to their mind, and are truthful. Most of them have a strong belief in social justice. They are not afraid of being alone. In fact, they like it. That's the reason they are often eager to employ in private work that others stay away from. This puts them in the situation of making marvelous offerings at work and school. They are able to understand numerous levels of meanings of words and thoughts. They can make connections in words that others fail to spot. They are determined, and when they make their mind to do anything or make a promise, they can be trusted blindly. People with Asperger syndrome love to speak their mind without getting worried about others' opinion. They are much more concerned about someone's abilities and proficiency than other people's opinion about that person. Adults with Asperger's are particularly good at memorizing and recalling information. They are good at that job which requires expertise in facts, details, and remembrance. They are often outstanding at remembering details that are often overlooked by others. They have an obsession with gathering data and tagging information on a subject that they find interesting. Their senses are very sharp, and this extreme sensitivity gives them a unique opportunity to view the world from a different perspective. They have very specific sensory experiences through the sensitivity to touch, smell, and vision. Another trait is that they are very trusting. This is the same trait that makes them vulnerable to others. They are sympathetic and considerate, and many uphold the conviction that the positive relationships are possible. A relationship with someone having Asperger syndrome can be amazing. Because they are free from prejudice and favoritism based on race, age, gender, or any other difference. They are not interested in being bullies or social manipulators. Chapter 11: Problems Faced by People with Asperger Syndrome. Even though people with Asperger syndrome lead a normal life and want to be sociable just like others, their different personality traits can sometimes lead them to appear detached. Some phrases, like hold your horses or caught red-handed, might be taken very factually by someone having Asperger syndrome, while other people would understand that it's just a symbolic figure of speech. They might also find it hard to visualize the results of their deeds or how their deeds can actually affect others. They sometimes don't know how people will react to their actions, and these things can actually cause a lot of misunderstandings, leading to anxiety. Some other problems are as follows. Someone with Asperger's might think that other people can't help him or her with problems. They will struggle by themselves until they will reach the limit of their tolerance level, but never ask for help. This is also a sign of having a tough nature, but it may lead to anxiety. School-going children with Asperger's often find the environment very unpredictable and hard to handle, which causes a lot of stress. Violent behavior can be activated by their hypersensitivity to certain things. They can be triggered by anything which others might not notice, like flickering lights, loud sounds, or repetitive actions. Children can also use violent behavior to avoid anything they don't want to do. On the other hand, aggression can be used to gain attention. This will lead to high aggression to a number of things that do not match their nature. They also can have a low level of tolerance. They may not like when someone touches them. Now, for others, this is a normal thing, but people with Asperger's can show a very strong reaction to being touched if they don't like it. The young person with Asperger syndrome may have trouble in foreseeing future proceedings. If he wants something now, he can't understand that he can get it later. For him, if he doesn't get it, he will never get it. This can cause him to show a severe reaction and have a tantrum. These kids often get bullied at school for their different behavior. If they get teased or bullied, they can show strong, violent behavior and lash out in their defense. They find it difficult to handle this pressure, especially if they do not have any close friends. Chapter 12. How to work with them. In reality, Asperger's is not a disease. It's just a mental condition. And though you can cure a disease, you cannot cure a person's nature. Still, there are measures that can be taken to improve the condition of a person having Asperger's. You cannot fully cure it, but medications and therapies can help in reducing the effects of negative aspects and support positive attributes. If proper guidance is provided, over time a person can become more comfortable by learning from experiences. Their sensitivities to different things may reduce over time, and they can become more able to manage their stress and anxiety. With Asperger's, not all is black. They do have some very strong and positive attributes. With time, they may learn to use their strengths and interests to their advantage and can find an environment where they are supported, accepted, and appreciated for their strengths. Through love, respect, and support, people having Asperger's syndrome can achieve a significant place in life. The great way to work with them is to educate yourself about their problems. The more you will know about them, the more you will understand their behavior, and better you will be able to deal with them. There are a few things that one should always remember while dealing with them. Stay calm and composed with them. If they show any violent or reserved behavior, remember that they are trying to share their feelings with you. Don't assume that they are misbehaving and don't like you. If they are having behavioral difficulties, then their stress level should always be reviewed before reaching any conclusion. Behavioral difficulties and stress are closely linked. Strengthen yourself by tolerating some behavioral issues. Try to help them by giving planned and clear routine to decrease their stress level. Try to tell them clearly the consequences of their violent behavior before it occurs. Find out some activities of their interest and let them indulge in them. Give them some new activities by simplifying those things they find difficult. They can also show problematic behavior out of boredom, so if tasks are too easy, try to make them challenging for engaging them. Along with these things, there are also a few steps that parents may take to help out their kids with Asperger syndrome. Asperger's children find it difficult to socialize. Parents should try to teach them some practical skills to blend into the social gatherings. Some introductory conversations can be helpful in this regard. Parents can practice conversational tactics with their children to teach them better. You can learn so much by just watching a thing repetitively. Parents should encourage their children to watch other kids while playing and doing other things. This way, they will learn how other kids behave with one another and learn. Some adults with Asperger's have reported that they have learned social skills by watching other people. Kids learn more from other kids than adults. If they will be encouraged to play with other kids, spend some social time, and watch others, they will surely learn new things and get better in social skills. The other great method is to tell social short stories. Parents can create short stories based on everyday situations and can tell their kids on a daily basis. This is a great way to explain social cues and proper responses to any unexpected situations. These stories can be just a few simple lines of explanation of some scenarios. Like, you can explain how kids greet each other when they meet, how you hand over something to someone, etc. Asperger's children often resist making eye contact. Parents can teach their kids having Asperger syndrome how to make eye contact and practice this at home with them. If a kid is being good with someone or showing very appropriate social behavior with others, then always encourage and identify their good behaviors. Try to say complimenting things to let them know that they have shown a good social skill. Tell them about your feelings and thoughts. Regularly engage them in sharing feelings about different situations. Start this by sharing your own feelings and how you felt about something. This will encourage them to think more deeply and share their feelings with others. As we know, these kids are very literal in their speech. Try to educate them about different phrases and their meanings. Try to use different phrases and tell them their actual meaning. They will find it very interesting, and this will save them from future confusions. Teach them a safety phrase to use when they are in the confused state. This will help them fight the anxiety that occurs when they find any situation confusing. Try to teach them that it's okay if they don't understand anything, and they can simply tell that they don't understand it.